So when you were looking at the virus as it was coming at us, what was your interpretation at the time of what the proper response would be?
In the early days, it was intense. Okay. So I'm watching, trying to get as much objective data as possible. At the same time, I'm watching the media just get all over this thing. And I have to say, my trust in the media has declined dramatically, I think, since, over the last, I would say at least 10 years. Trust in mainstream media or any media, either side, has gone way, way down. And so I was intentionally not going to media, but I was searching for experts and searching for a range of opinions. So I intentionally do this as well. Go to an expert, look at one side, and then look at the other side, because data is data, but there's always multiple ways to look at it. Early on, this was looking pretty severe. However, I did not believe any of the data out of China initially. Absolutely didn't believe any of it. And now we know it really wasn't believable. I could sense a huge amount of fear there. And so I was actually watching in terms of society and culture. I was watching for mass hysteria response, and that came up incredibly fast. In terms of the data, had to be patient. And like I said, now I think these serological studies have come out. It's still a super serious situation, but that catastrophic situation has not occurred. And I think the data shows why.
So about a month ago, I was tweeting about Nassim Taleb, who is a guy that I always kind of wince around because I've read his stuff and it's very, very good. But his perspective on agriculture is one that I don't agree with. And so I kind of always wonder, does he see something I don't see, or is he blind in some other way? But I read his stuff because I think it's very, very interesting. And he had this statement that said it pays to panic early. Right? If you're going to panic, you want to be the first person to panic, not the last person. In this scenario, a month out, do you think his statement should have been applied in that scenario like the way that I did? Pays to panic early, run to the grocery store, get everything, batten down the hatches?
Fauci said the same thing. And I can see if you're an epidemiologist, it does make sense. Because if you think you're at a particular point today, you're actually 3 weeks behind the disease. So understand that it's actually similar to pest control, on plants and greenhouses. If you see a sign of a pest, the last thing you would ever do is spot treat that single plant. If you see a pest, you can guarantee it's everywhere, and you can guarantee it's going to get worse. So I completely understand that perspective. What we're losing track of is a more strategic response, and the fact that, okay, precautionary principle, which is where all society has been going now for like the last 20 years, right? Precautionary principle. The thing is this, dude, precautionary principle comes with an insane cost. And actually, in terms of risk management and then a cost with precautionary principle. So I also worry about this, and I'm comfortable, well, whatever. I rock climb and I do stuff that is considered risky. So I'm actually a little more comfortable with risk than some people. But what seems like now is that concept and the precautionary principle, just in case, no one's asking the question, how much is that going to cost us?
Yeah, it seems like we're applying a logic that we don't apply to other things in the same way. Like, cars are a great example. Like, if you actually understood the risk that you were taking in a car, most people probably would say now, if we just dropped that new technology into society, no, look at how many people it kills. No, look at all the death and destruction and terribleness that comes with it. I don't think we should add, and it's not worth it. But if we didn't have cars, we couldn't have anywhere near the society that we have. You have to be willing to take risks.
Yeah. And we assimilate risks, right, when we know them. And so this was unknown and there was a lot of uncertainty. So I can kind of understand that initially, that we had to be on this response. And I do think there was at least credible intelligence coming out of China saying something really scary and unexpected is occurring in this city. And I believe that type of information, it was not, detailed information, but I think there was a ripple of fear that went through several countries when intelligence reported on what was occurring. And so that kind of triggered this whole response, right? And it was a fear-based response. And so my whole theory was this: in the very beginning, going back, I was thinking, okay, whoa, no evidence, no data, really, and massive amounts of fear. Like, generally, it's not a good combination. But back to your analogy of risk, dude, I remember 9/11, when 9/11 happened, and you had, a bunch of people saying, well, even at the time, they thought maybe 20,000 died in the towers. And people were like, well, that many people die in car accidents. I remember tons of people saying that. And of course, more right-leaning people were like, holy shit, that's unacceptable. Sorry.
It's a podcast. So, you can say whatever you want.
Oh, cool. Right on. So it's just weird how that worked. Like 9/11, people were like, you know what, 20,000, and most of my left-leaning friends were like, no big deal. People die in car wrecks. And now you have like the right saying it, like, oh, well, 60,000 died, that's same as the flu, or that's same as pneumonia, or that's same as like car wrecks, or, so it's just like, those are ideological statements. They're not really based on strategy.
Oh, that's super interesting. So how would you base this on strategy?
Well, clearly now we have data showing that there's a very steep age gradient, incredibly steep age gradient, right? So in the pandemic in 1918, the average age of a victim who died was 28 years old. Average age of victim in Italy, 80 years old. So the data is clearly showing a very steep age curve, right? If you're very old and very sick, this coronavirus is incredibly dangerous. And I have friends and family on the East Coast who are at risk right now. So, but then as you go down, like for you and I, healthy people at our age, there's very low risk. So strategically, wouldn't you think you protect those that are clearly susceptible and their caregivers? And it's funny, whenever I floated that, people freak out. And then they say, that's too hard. I'm like, okay, so that's too hard, and it's easier to lock down everyone, like the entire country, and destroy the economy. And it just, like, people are not thinking forward through this whole thing. So anyways, many people have started arguing for what's called a more vertical strategy, which is protect the susceptible instead of just horizontally locking everyone down. I mean, dude, this is medieval technology, right? Quarantine. I mean, goes back to the Middle Ages. That's our strategy.